Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. Shem Egen Shir Torah. Mrs. Boston, I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. I'd like to give a big yeshikayach to Mr. and Mrs. Matas Abraham, sponsoring tonight's shir. Lilina Shomois, Moshe Yaakov, and Matas Yerushalayim. Osher Ben Alta Chaim Yeshai, Chaim Mindel Bas Yeshai Yehuda, Yehuda's Bas Moshe Yaakov, Ita Sarah Bas Rabbi Yisrael, and Yisha Gittel Bas Rabbi Yaakov Ala Shalom. Leim Hashalom. Also, L'chaim as a schus for Tzlacha for the daughter and son-in-law just got married last week. Should be a binyan adayad kashash l'kayom masach yidish nachas, and as schus for zivugim hagunim for Rochel Bas Gittel Miriam, Nosen David Ben Gittel Miriam, and Sarah Leah Bas Malka. Have great schus is sponsoring the remaining shir tomorrow night. Call Egen Shir Torah 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Tonight we have the cover to have with us once again Rabbi Yonatan Rietti on to speak on who is responsible for my anxiety, the crisis or me. And now the shir that you've all been anxiously awaiting. Rabbi Rietti.
Good evening. Special thank you to Rabbi Bold and Rabbi Klein for arranging all the details that makes these shiurim available to so many people. And also want to add Le'ilui Nishmas, my mother, Aleh Shalom, Tzalcha Bat Chabiba, whose yahrzeit is tomorrow night, so I'm dedicating the shir for her. So I'm going to ask you the question. It's really a huge question. Who is responsible? Who is ultimately responsible for my anxiety? Is it the crisis in the marriage, the crisis with the kids? Is it the crisis, if there is one in the community, Chas v'shalom? Is it the crisis globally that is really the source of my anxiety? Or am I the source of my anxiety? Or maybe it's a combination. So I'm going to ask for a quick show of hands. I will not count you, but how many of you would say the real cause of my anxiety is the crisis? No, one vote, okay. Who says it's really me? Okay, we've got a few more. Who thinks it might be a combination? Okay, so it sounds like I'm the one who's the cause. So thank you very much for coming. Are there any questions? Okay, so now we've got a new question. Why is it me? So let's try to figure this out together. If the crisis that I'm experiencing is because of the marriage, or the children, or the financial crunch that I feel in, or the health issues that a person might be going through, or it's the global anti-Semitism, or whatever's taking place with our enemies in Gaza, West Bank, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Somalia. And of course, between them all, they only have 500,000 square miles, and our 7 and a bit thousand square miles of Eretz Yisrael, they have no room in 500,000 square miles for the people in Gaza, etc. So when we hear the news or read the news, is that really what's causing me anxiety? And if it is, what has to happen for me not to experience anxiousness, worry, pachad, fear from the situation in the marriage, with the health issues, with the finances? What happens? What has to happen? What has to happen? Stop reading the news. But what has to happen also for me to not experience anxiety if the anxiety is outside in? It's coming from the circumstances in my life. I've got to stop thinking. That's actually the ultimate solution. And if you want, you can fall asleep, because that's the actual answer to the whole problem. But sorry? Okay, so I can the more I know, the more emunah I can have in a Kadosh Baruch Hu. If it really is the crisis, then what has to change? Me or the crisis? I do, but if I believe it's the crisis, in that paradigm, in the paradigm of thinking that it's my wife who's driving me crazy, it's my husband who shows me almost no appreciation, I have bust my tail for this person, I've given decades of my life. If it's my children who are driving me nuts because they're just so disrespectful, so I can't believe it. 1 hour of their chutzpah is more than I had in a lifetime to my parents, and before you know it, my upset as a parent or as a spouse or in the workplace is because I'm thinking, like you pointed out, that it's the people in my life or circumstances that's feeding my anxiety. In that paradigm, what has to happen for me to not be anxious? The people outside of me have to change. The circumstances outside of me have to change. But is that ever going to happen? It's never going to happen. So why do I fall into the trap so easily of thinking that my anxiety is an outside-in paradigm? It's an outside-in feeder. It's coming from people and circumstances happening to me. So I'm going to share with you, we're going to look at Shlomo HaMelech, Chacham Mikol Adam, in a few moments. I want to share with you, based on what Shlomo HaMelech tells us in Mishlei, Da'aga belevish yashchena. We're going to look at the second half of the pasuk, which is much less quoted, but very much contains the solution. Da'aga belevish, Perek Yud Beis, pasuk Chav Hei. When a person has worry, the Radak, Reb David Kimchi, a Rishon, in his Sefer HaShrashim, he offers that the word da'aga and pachad and yira, they are all one inyan. They are all the same topic of some different level of fear. There are slight differences. Pachad refers to something that is imminent, is about to happen or suddenly happens. And yira is something that's much more ongoing. And daiga, that is what we're talking about tonight. Anxiety, worry. So comes along Shlomo HaMelech, da'aga belevish. If a person has got daiga in their mind, please be mochmi. I know I've said it before. The word lev, the vast majority of times, vast majority means about 95 out of 100, not 9 out of 10, more than that. The word lev means mind. If it's doubled over, levav, it means thoughts. You just learnt last week, Parshas, 2 weeks ago, Parshas Ve'eschanan, Perek Vav, Pasuk Hey, on the words, love Hashem b'chol levavka, love Hashem with all your thoughts. So it comes along, Ibn Ezra, Ramban concurs, Leiv hu hada'at. 3 words, Leiv hu hada'at. Rabbi Avigdor Miller of blessed memory in his Sefer Leiv Avigdor, write it in Siman Aleph, in Shar Hada'at, the gate of one's mind, and he talks about Chashivas Das Adam. He starts right away, Hine, Leiv b'Lashon HaKodesh, the word Leiv, in this unique language, Lashon HaKodesh, language of Kadosh Baruch Hu, created reality. In Lashon HaKodesh, the word Leiv, Misamen es koyach hamachshava v'haregesh. The word Leiv in Lashon HaKodesh is iconic. It's an icon, Simon. It's an icon for the mind, machshava, thought, and regesh, feeling. It's in that order because the moment you think something, you feel it. We happen to be living in a society that has made an industry out of feelings. Ought to be called Emotions Inc. But the reality is, the reason why the word leiv really means mind is because you don't need a word for emotion if you know the source is in the word leiv, which means mind. The moment you think it, you feel it. That's why it means both. You can't separate the two. If they were two separate entities, Lashon HaKodesh would have a word for emotion. There's no word for emotion throughout the entire Tanakh. The word regesh, look at every single time in Tanakh, you'll see it. I think the first time is in Perek Beis in Tehillim. Rikshu el hagoyim. Regesh does not mean emotion. That's after Lashon HaKodesh, we do use the word regesh to signify emotion, but throughout Tanakh, regesh is a kibbutz gadol b'yachad. When a large number of people come together, that's what regesh means. Rikshu el Agoyim is referring to when the non-Jews come together and they plan against us. I know that sounds crazy, but that can happen. And David HaMelech was talking about this already in Perek Beis of Tehillim. I'm sorry? Yes, that means that's referring to a large group of people.
Create activity, create action.
The toitzah of going to Lahavdil Met Stadium and having 100,000 from Yidden celebrating the Siyum Hashas. The toitzah of that rikshu, of a lot of Jews coming together, the product of that is that you get excited, but that's not what the word means. I'm just quoting what the word is throughout Tanakh. Check it out. Every time when you see the word regesh, it does not mean feeling. That's a later. That means in large groups. Yes, look up Rashi, the Radak, Sforno, look at anyone, they'll tell you that it does, they won't tell you it doesn't mean feeling because they're not going to tell you what it doesn't mean, they'll tell you what it does mean. It's referring to a large group of people going to the Beis HaMikdash. The toitzah of that is that you get excited. So you can say it's related, but it's not a Lashon HaKodesh word. The reason why there's no word in Lashon HaKodesh for feeling is not because it doesn't exist. Of course we feel, but the reason why is because it's already included in another word called leiv. And you feel your thoughts in real time. I'm not even sure if it's slower than the speed of light. I'm sure it's simultaneously. Because the moment you feel something, you are actually feeling what you're thinking. That means to say, if you feel angry, that your feeling angry is telling you what you're thinking. Because that's the real source of the anger. If I'm feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, it's because I've got thoughts that created that feeling. And the moment my physical heart experiences fear, it changes my pulse rate, and the entire body, literally the entire body, in a split second, responds to what I'm saying up here. So if a person, has v'shalom, is in imminent danger, and this, people in combat, they are warned about this, that the first time they see someone, maybe a comrade in their unit, blown to pieces, the body reacts in a way that it actually, this is not in my notes, but it actually completely expels the urine and the number twos from the body, so that every minute ounce of energy can be completely devoted to defending oneself, because digestion is the one function of the body that takes the most energy. And so the body is brilliant. It's designed by its creator. It's got divine intelligence. And so in a moment of extreme danger, the body will expel all the toxicity that is in the stomach and the urine tract in order to devote all the energy to defense. So that's a separate subject, but the point really is going back to our subject. And please check out all these psukim. Wherever you see regesh, look what Rashi, Radak, Sforno, you'll see it. It never once tells you it's referring to emotion, because we don't have a word for emotion. We don't need it. It's already included in the word leiv, because the moment you think it, you feel it. Rabbis machashavos belevish. Where do you do your thinking? It's a pasuk in Mishlei, Perek Yutes, pasuk Chaf Aleph. We say it every morning in davening. Where do you do your thinking? In your heart or your mind? You're doing it over here. It happens to be you feel your thinking. So you've got one word for two, what looks like separate entities. They're not separate entities. That's exactly the whole point. Medical science is slowly coming around to the accepting the reality. And that is, you cannot treat the body in isolation of the mind. Because the mind has so much influence over the body. Urka vatsamais kina. What's that mean? Kina which the Radak points out is an inyan, or the Mitzudas, the Mitzudas points out that that's an inyan of Ka'as. Kina is a form of Ka'as. My jealousy of other people, their intelligence, better looks, more possessions, better finances, more beautiful family, whatever I'm jealous about makes me upset, angry. So, Kina actually has the power, and that's a thought. Sefer Charedim, when it lists all the mitzvahs, there are 81 mitzvahs, Shatali believe, that depend on what you're thinking. So, Sefer Charedim, Perek Tes, is all the assays, and Perek Chafalaf has a list of all the loita assays. So in the loita assays, loitachmoid loititave, the issa of kina is a issa of what I'm thinking. So feeling jealous is not something taking place here before it took place here. This is where it's taking place. So urkav at samais, kina, the most strongest element of your entire anatomy are your bones. Your skull is the strongest of all of them. It's your bones, not yours personally, but bones actually rot from thoughts of jealousy. Rabbeinu Yonah on that same pasuk points out that before the jealousy rots my bones, it will actually atrophy my muscle fat. The muscle fat actually softens. And that's all coming from what I'm thinking inside my mind. So now back to our pasuk. Yud Beis pasuk Chafhei in Mishlei. Da'aga belevish, when a person has a worry over here, which immediately affects his heart, and the heart sends out to the entire body, the body can actually tremble from fear. Da'aga belevish yashchena. Look at Metzudas. Yashchena is a lashon of shechia. Bow down. Deflate it. Don't make a big deal out of it. Lashon hishtahave. Just let it go over you. Don't take it seriously. Deflate it. That's what yashchena really means. Comes along Chazal. It's in 3 different places. In Yuma, Ayin Hay, you have the famous list there of 2 items, Ravasi and Ravashi. Ravasi and Ravami. Chad Amar doesn't tell you who says what. Chad Amar, Yashchena, read it, Yasichena mida'atoi. Stop thinking about it. I'm sorry? Yasichena mida'atoi. Yeah. That's the Lashon in, I have a Mishlei here. Let's see if it quotes that Chazal. Yasichena mida'atoi. It's in 3 different places, and each one uses the same Lashon. It happens to be that Lev and Das are interchangeable throughout the Shas and Mishnayos and Gemara. The very last Mishnah in Menachos tells us the famous Mishnah that there's no difference between the Ani and the Asher. Each of them are awarded the same response from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where the Ani brings a mere flour offering with a little bit of oil, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Reach nichoyach l'Hashem. And the Asher brings a beautiful paro or a goat or a lamb, and it's the same Lashon, Reach nichoyach l'Hashem. And why is that? So Chazal learn out, that's the last Mishnah in Menachos, Echad amar ve'echad mamit. It makes no difference how much you bring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ubilvad shikaven es dasoi l'shemayim. As long as your mind, the Gemara in Daf Hey in Brachos, which is quoting the same Mishnah, it says it liboy. But the Mishnah doesn't say that. The reason why is very simple. They're interchangeable. Chazal always knew that Das and Lev are synonymous. It just happens to be that in literally almost every, the very few times the word Lev sometimes means your physical heart, very few times, like Aaron in Parashat Tetzaveh, Perek Chaf Ches, Pasuk Chaf Tes, and Lamed, he wore the Choshen al Liboy, against his physical heart, the location of his physical heart. Or in Chaf Hey, in Siman Chaf Hey, in Shulchan Aruch, where it talks about the position of the tefillin shel yad has to be keneged halev. So it's referring obviously to your physical heart. The vast majority of times, the lev can, sometimes it means, but not as often, but it can mean a metaphor, lev hayam, Lev Hashemayim. We just had it in Parshas Vayischanan in the Chazara of the Aseret Dibros. Moshe Rabbeinu is describing them, Perek Dalet, Pasuk Yud Aleph, V'har boya ad Lev Hashemayim. The mountain was flaming till the Lev in Shemayim. There's no physical Lev in Shemayim. It's a metaphor, meaning in the midst of all the black cloud and the thunder and the lightning and the increased sound of the trumpets, the tzaitzras, but the shofar, sorry. But the point I'm bringing out here is that the word Lev always was understood. I spoke in Lakewood a few weeks ago, so a gentleman came up to me whose father told me his son, the gentleman came up to me, just made his 25th Siyum on Shas Bavli. So he came up to me and he said, it's so clear to him that throughout Tanakh and throughout Shas Bavli, Lev means mind. Vast majority of times. So that we lost that in the translation. But that's not tonight's subject. Tonight's subject is to understand how this word, Daiga belevish yashchenat, because once you know Lev means mind, it changes your mind. I don't mean that as a pun, it's just literal. Because here's the real question we have to get to. And I'm going to quote the Gemara in Yuma in just a few moments. Is my experience what's stressing me out? Or is it what I'm thinking about the experience that is stressing me out? And that's what you're pointing to, is the outside-in paradigm is never true. It's never something outside of me, whether it's people or circumstances or news or whatever it is that I hear or see that is actually inducing the daiga. Daiga is a self-induced thought. It doesn't mean it will never pop up. I'm going to share with you a few stories about how our great role models amongst the Gdolim dealt with Daiga and how they looked at it. But right now we see that Yashchena, Shlomo Melech, Chacham Mikol Adam. He take a statistical analysis of all the therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists and psychoanalysts of his generation to identify, okay, which is the most popular way to deal with Daiga. Today it's an industry. I kid you not. It's astonishing how many innocent children and people are being pushed in the direction of medication and various therapies instead of asking a very simple question. And that's the question we're looking at tonight. Is Daiga a choice? And if it is, then I'm in power. If it's not my choice because it's really my childhood, my adolescence and not being understood, and my first job was the worst I ever had, and then my marriage was really falling apart from the first day, and before you know it, I've got all these reasons why I'm an anxious person, but it's all outside in. And when I play that game, everyone else has to change, and not me. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants me to know that he gave me 81 mitzvahs that depend on the mind. One of them, coming up soon, Parsha Shoftim, in a shul near you, Perek Chav Pasuk Aleph, Lo tira mehem, do not be afraid of your enemies. Rebbeinu Shalom, how can you tell me that? A mitzvah was Aseh De'araisa, don't be afraid of my enemies. They got superior numbers, superior artillery, superior armies. How can I not be afraid of them? So Kadosh Baruch Hu, and you'll look it up in Rambam, I'll quote it at the end, Bezrat Hashem. Rambam actually tells us in the halachas of Milchama that this is a mitzvah Aseh De'araisa, that the soldier going to war for a Jewish army is forbidden to allow thoughts of fear enter his mind. And if it does, he should just ignore it. Let go. Mesiach das. We all have that power. Everybody. Bar no one. You get kicked in the shin in the middle of a game, and you carried on running until the whistle blew like 40 minutes later, and now you're limping off the field. Excuse me, we got this on video. You got kicked 40 minutes ago. Now you're limping, you were running around the whole time. No, you don't seem to understand. It was the semi-finals, the championships, finals, and there's so much invested in this game that my mind actually said to the pain, keep quiet, I'll deal with you later. It was completely Masiach Das. So this is what Shlomo HaMelech is offering us. He did not get this from a popular opinion. This is Mepi Agvura. This is part of a Masorah that started with Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's Baruch HaKodesh. Daiga belevish yashchena. Deflate it. Don't make it bigger than it really is. How do you do that? Plan A, yasichena medatoi. Once you know, oh, I'm experiencing anxiety. That's because I'm thinking about the marriage, about the kids, then yasichena medatoi. Stop thinking about it. If I can't do that, go to Plan B. Plan B, yasichena la'acherim. Talk it out with others. That is the biggest quote for speaking out and venting. Please be mochel me. Ask anyone who's getting paid to listen to people venting to please give me the makar in the Torah for this, and they'll very likely quote you this pasuk. Daiga belevish yasichein alacherim. That's not what the pasuk says, but that is one of the meanings according to Chazal. So that is what the pasuk means. But what's the rest of the pasuk? Ask them. V'dava toiv yisamchena. Same pasuk. And look at Rabbeinu Yonah. Look at Rashi on that pasuk. Perek Yud Beis pasuk Kaf Hey. Choose someone who, if you're going to speak out your daiga, choose someone that is going to help you see the good in what you're experiencing. V'dava toiv. The silver lining, see something redeemable about what you're going through. V'dava toiv yisamchena. Look at the pasuk. Look at the Mefarshim, and they'll tell you. Yisamchena means make the daiga a cause for simcha. Do you hear that? It's very simple. This is not about positive thinking versus negative thinking. I once had a friend. He's so good. He's a real pessimist. He said, you know what? There's no point in being a pessimist. It never works anyway. So, or like someone said, you know, I know that worry really works because 90% of all the things I've worried about never happened. It goes both ways. But the point that Shlomo HaMelech is saying, that is ultimately the key. But what we're doing here is we're unpacking where is my emunah, my betochen coming from. And the answer is, it's taking place over here. The mitzvah of emunah is one of the mitzvahs that are tali belev, that depend on the mind. It's not in your pinky, it's not in your elbow, it's not in your stomach, your knees. The mitzvah of betochen is a mitzvah of the mind. So once we know that it's really the mind that is the one that's causing me to either feel stress or be mesiach das from the stress, now I can actually believe, have emunah, that it's Hashem who's popping up in my mind, who's servicing in my life through this spouse, through these children. And that may also help me have more bitachon and trust that He knows what He's doing. But the most important first step is just recognize, is the stress coming from the person and what they said, the circumstances and what's happening, or is it coming from what I'm thinking about the circumstances, what I'm thinking about that person? Because once I know it's really over here, now Hashem has empowered me. Because I can control my next thought. I'm not stuck with a thought, ever. I'm never stuck with the same thinking. I can obsess over the thinking, and obsess over it, and obsess over it. My Rebbe, Rabbi Chaim Kramer, calls it watering the weeds. You've got a gorgeous, beautiful garden. And your garden is your mind. And in that beautiful, gorgeous garden, every single different tree is a different person in your life. Every petal, every leaf, every blade of grass, every different type of flower and vegetable that grows in your gorgeous, gorgeous garden are all the nekudos tovos, all the good that's taking place in your physical health, all the good that's taking place in your mind, all the good that's taking place in your family, in your children. All the good, hakol hatov, asher natan lecha Hashem Elokech, which Hashem has given to you. That's that beautiful garden. When you see a weed in the garden, and it has happened, what's the logical thing to do? When you see a weed, what do? You rip it out. Now, what would you say to me if I go into my kitchen, fill up the watering can, and water the weed? What are you going to say? Rietti, that's logical or that's illogical? That's sick. That makes no sense. Next day, I come out into my beautiful, gorgeous garden. Oh my gosh, that weed. It's much bigger than yesterday. There's a small one right next to it. What's the logical thing to do? Uproot it. And what do? Go and water the weed. Every day, or twice a week, or double sessions. Water the weed, water the weed, water the weed. And before you know, guess what happens to my garden? What's going to happen? If I don't stop complaining and blaming, denying it's my fault, and I'm not responsible for anything, it's all everyone else's fault, what's going to happen to my beautiful garden? It will get taken over by the weeds. This is the simple metaphor of my mind. Shlomo HaMelech says it. Kol yemei ha'ani ra'im. Every single day of the poor man, awful, terrible, ra'im, bad. Rabbeinu Shalom, Shlomo HaMelech chacham mikol adam. I need him to tell me that if I can't pay my bills, I'm behind on every single payment, and things are going really difficult because I just don't have enough money for anything. I'm behind on the mortgage, behind on the rent, behind on the lease. Kol yemei ha'ani ra'im. I need Shlomo HaMelech to tell me that. Finish the pasuk. V'toiv leiv mishteh tamid. A good mind is at a constant banquet. Oh, Shlomo HaMelech's not thinking about a financially wealthy person. That's not what he's referring to. You can have a Howard Hughes. Some people in this room may remember who he was. Poor man died with $2.1 billion to his name about 40 years ago. This is before you heard about billionaires. And the last entry in his diary, as reported in Time magazine, a whole feature article on him, the last entry in his diary, he wrote, I quote verbatim, I never recall a day in my life when I awoke and said, I'm happy today. Rabbeinu Shalom, he had 2.1 billion reasons to be happy. If I'm not counting that I was conceived, which I'm assuming most of you were, and you weren't aborted, if I'm not counting the fact that I was not born, stillborn. There was no miscarriage. I was born completely healthy. I was born a Jew. OMG. You're born into a frum family? Whoa. We won so many mega lotteries before we even entered this world. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Leiv Tov Mishteh Tamid. A good mind that's paying attention to the beautiful flowers. When there's a weed, a masich das, just rip it out. Don't pay attention. Now, modern psychology will claim that's denial. And if you deny the bad that's taking place in your life, in the marriage, with the children, it's just going to come out much worse later on. Listen very carefully. Please listen very carefully, because what I'm sharing with you is so uncomplicated. It's so ridiculous. It's embarrassingly simple. You only operate over here. You can't experience anything except through thought. It's impossible. You can't experience even a feeling without thinking it. Which means you can always change your feelings if you want. I'm going to share with you Makaros in a few moments. When you're Masiach Das from the weeds, you can pay attention to taking care of the garden, and you are in a much better state to find a solution to how do I avoid the weeds coming up in the first place. But here's what happens when I'm busy watering the weeds. I can't believe there's so many weeds in my garden. And they keep coming up more and more and more. And I water the weeds and water the weeds. So guess what? When I'm anxious, when I'm fearful, when I'm worried, when I'm in a place of resentment, anger, accusing, blaming, do I make the best decisions when I'm angry? No. Be Masiach Das from the weed so that your mind is able to deal with the weed. The best way is ignore it by uprooting it and move on. And now you can, if you need to, think of, okay, how do I avoid this in the future and not go on a date and read the red flags early? How do I deal, now that I am married, how do I deal with the stuff that comes up between us? Now that I've got a kid with this package of variables that I had no preparation or training for, Rebbeinu Shalom, if you gave me this kid with these variables in his character, her character, then it must mean you trust I can figure out how to help this kid. I'm turning to you because I can't do it without you. But if I'm just going to get into a state of anxiety and fear and worry about the future of this child, and guess what's going to happen to the type of decisions I make? Or worse, please forgive me for saying so, I rely on other people to tell me what. And I'm going to share with you what's Yasichein La'acherim mean. We're going to see in a few seconds. So comes along Chazal. You got two options of how to deflate worry. I'm going to give you a working definition. Anxiety has two sides to it. Side number one of the same coin is anxiety is an huge overestimation of the power of this thing that I'm scared or worried or fearful of. It's a huge overestimation of the actual seeming cause of the anxiety. And the other side of the coin is it's a huge underestimation. Anxiety is a very big underestimation of my power in my mind to move on and let go. That's what anxiety really is. It's an overestimation of reality. And there's only one reality, and that's God's. We're going to see that in a few moments. What does he say about when things go wrong? Yasichein La'acherim. So I brought Pele Yoetz, a photocopy. In Ois Daiga, Pele Yoetz offers the following. So he quotes the same Gemara, Ayin Hey, in Yuma. Yasichein Medatoi. The first mandama is stop thinking about it. Inami Yasichein La'acherim, or else speak it out with others. V'travayu itnu. Both are correct. And it's not a machlokis. It's not one Rav Avsi and Rav Ami. They're arguing. One says, no, just be Masech Das. The other one says, no, that is denial. You got to talk it out with others. Says the Pele Yoetz, Shibetchila yishtadel lahasicha medasai. The first thing you have to try and do is not think about the worry. Lahasicha medatoi b'machshavos tahiros. Replace the worry with good thoughts, clean thoughts. Thoughts of Torah, tefillah, haidah, thank you, praise. Any good thoughts, utainos, or even ways that you can come up, arguments that you come up with your own mind, maspikai sheyesh kedei lidchais hadaiga, in order to push the daiga away. So that's option number one. V'im lo yuchal, if I'm finding the obsessive thinking is pounding and knocking on my brain again and again, she said that, he did that, it's her fault, I am unhappy. It's because of the community, I'm in the wrong zip code. And I'm making an enemy out of whoever I got to talk it out because I can't get rid of this obsessive thinking. What should I do? V'im lo yuchal, yasichein la'acherim. Look at the Pele Yoetz, what he says next. Dahainu talmidei hachamim v'anshei mada. Either talmidei hachamim, veritable talmidei hachamim, v'anshei mada, or people of knowledge. You look at, it's in 3 prokim, but mainly I think in Perik, Hey and Vav, in Hilchos Deis of the Rambam, all the definitions of what's called a Hakam or a Talmud Hakam. There he's really referring to a Hakam because a Talmud Hakam is a Talmud of a Hakam. But the point being is going to someone who's going to help you. And how are they going to help you? They're going to help you fulfill the first Eitzah, how to let go. Yasichein medatoi. Kvar ama hachacham. Now he's quoting from, it doesn't actually say, but it became a famous song, but it's over here. Ha'ava ayin, the past does not exist. Ha'atid adayin, The future hasn't happened yet. It's still in the works. Daga minayin. Hold on. The past is history. And I'm talking about a sichsuk I might have had with someone on the phone 5 minutes before I walked into the best medrash. That's also history. Every hour and minute of today that already happened is dead, gone. Don't ever go there unless there's a special lesson you want to pull out of it to move you forward. But if going there actually increases my resentment towards that person for what they said and did, my feelings of betrayal, my anger and bitterness toward, this is not the first time, and I can't sleep tonight, that person is not in my brain. They have no power to get inside here. There's only one person who can cause me to feel stressed. Me! I'm the author of my thinking. It's my stressful thinking that's stressing me out. So ha'ava ayin, the past is history. It's gone. Don't go there. Ha'atid adayin, the future never exists, because as soon as you get there, it's already the present. So daiga minayin, where's there any room for worry? But that's not the end of the song. I don't know how the song goes, but in Pele Yoetz from nearly 300 years ago, kum shtei yayin, get up and take a drink of wine. I don't know if he means it literally, but my understanding is very simple. Get up and celebrate life. Life is good, even when it looks that it's not so good. The problem is not the problem. The problem is what I'm thinking about the problem. There's always something, some redeeming factor in myself, in my spouse, in my children, in my neighbors. There's always something that is so good about that person's quality of character that havidanet kol adam lechavschus. That means there's something to be done chavschus about that person. And Chazal say kol adam, everybody. No one's excluded. Okay, there are Rishonim, but the people that we're dealing with in Anshe Shomer Torah mitzvahs, this is what it's referring to. So plan A is don't make it bigger than it is. It's don't inflate the daiga. The daiga is always way more than I think it is, way more. And I underestimate my power in my mind, in my thought, to just move on, let go. And plan B, if I find that too hard, talk it out. Who should you talk it out with? Someone who, according to Rabbi Yonatan Rietti based Pasuk Kafei in Mishlei, is going to help you mikayim the rest of the same pasuk. V'davar tov yisamchena. Okay, find something good that will make the daiga into a reason to be joyful, so that next time I'm attacked by that thought of daiga, my response will be, oh, what a simcha. I'll give you an example. It sounds extreme, but it's actually David HaMelech. When you hear about our enemies, and they're talking and planning, and what they're planning, that could be a serious reason for worry, anxiety. David HaMelech recorded in Tehillim how he responded to the following. Not 5 or 10 or 20 members of the enemy surrounding him, for example, the Plishtim, Hamavin Yavin, but rather, mirivavos, tens of thousands, and he'd be alone, surrounded by tens of thousands of people. Now that's a reason, I think, on paper, to be worried. This could be my end. Comes along David HaMelech, Perek Gimel Pasuk Zayin, Loi ira mirivivos am. I will not be afraid of tens of thousands of people, Asher Saviv, that are surrounding Shatu Alai, and they're encamped against me. I'm one person against them. David HaMelech, how can you say that? Well, there's a Gemara in Yuma, I think it's Samach Tes, where in the, I can't remember now if it's in Das Kenim or in the Tosfos there, but there's a beautiful story there. I think it's Rabbi Yeshua who's challenged by the Caesar, the Roman Emperor Antoninus. Antoninus?
No.
No.
Maybe it was Hadrianus.
Hadrianus, thank you. Yes, it was Hadrianus. Excellent. You helped me last time as well. Hadrianus actually asked him, you are one sheep. The Jewish people is one sheep. You're surrounded by 70 fierce wolves who are growling and can't wait to devour you. How does one sheep stand a chance against 70 wolves? Can you see there might be a parallel today? And comes along Reb Shua, and he says to the Caesar, why are you so fixated on the numbers of enemies against us? Look a little bit higher in the sky and you'll see there's a roya, there's a shepherd who's taking care of us. And sure enough, we've survived the Babylonians, the Mitzrim, we've survived the Persians and Haman, we survived the Greek Empire. That was one of the worst. They tried to destroy our neshamas with selling to us, glorify Olam Hazeh. You couldn't imagine them infiltrating our magazines, and 98% of the Teichen is all glorifying food, drink, clothes, luxury vacations. You can't imagine it. But that's what the Greeks were doing. And there was a very serious proportion of the frum world that started going in that direction, so that by the time their children grew up, they were much more interested in the Olam HaGashmis, and they celebrated the body with the Olympics. They celebrated taking care of their body with exercise ad ein sof. It was all about externals. That was one of the worst, and we survived them. Where's Greece today? Gone. Dust of history. Oh, the Roman Empire? Well, we're kind of still there, but we're still here. How many of you went to yeshiva with a Roman? They're gone. Okay, you can see the Colosseum over there and the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but these are, or the Arch of Titus, where Rav Kahneman famously stood under the arch on a trip back from Eretz Yisrael back from America to Eretz Yisrael. He stopped in Rome, and there was a small group of people. One there was a Dr. Katz who told me the story, but it's recorded in many Sfarim. He stood under the arch, and Rav Kahneman, of blessed memory, Rosh Shiva of Panovich, waved his finger up at the arch and says, Titus, Titus, where are you? Long gone, forgotten. And where are the Jews that you tried to destroy? We're still here. You're long gone, forgotten, and buried. And that's how every single one of our enemies have ended up. Perfect track record. Disappeared. Crusades, Inquisition, Cossacks, Tachbatat, Tsarist Russia, Communist Russia, Holocaust, Third Reich, Jihad. Check out the Roya. Check out the shepherd. There's nothing to fear. David HaMelech says it in his own words, Lo ira. What will he not be afraid of? Merivavois. A whole people of tens of thousands surrounding him. So how do I deal with my stuff? The Davar Tov Yisamchena. I'll give you an example. With all the anti-Semitism that's taking place today, if one does look at the news or listen to it or hear it, it can be equally a cause for great simcha. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a gavul, a saturation point, after which when the hatred towards us reaches that saturation point, then the Gula has to come. Meaning to say, they're actually bringing about the Gula, they're accelerating the pace of the Gula. We don't want to hear about any injuries and any deaths, and we cry, hopefully every day, in our tefillahs, every day in Tehillim after davening, because we know tefillah works, and that's why we engage in it. And we are the real enemies. It's not our physical enemies. My Averas is what gives power to the physical enemies to hurt me. Paro had no power over us, because in Parshas Beshalach, when Uparo Hikriv, when Paro brought close, it should say came close, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't say Karev, it says Hikriv. So Perek Yudalet, I think it's Pasuk Ches round about there. So the Medrash famously asks, why is it Paro Hikriv? Brought close. It should be Karev. He came close when we were entrapped. Sagar Aleihim Amidbar. We were on this beachhead, and we're now surrounded by the Yam Suf in front of us, mountains on the side and desert, and in front of us, right behind us, are the Mitzvim. There was nowhere to go, completely trapped. So says the Medrash, Paroi Hikriv B'nei Yisrael LaHakadosh Baruch Hu Al Yedei HaTeshuva She'asu. Paroi brought us close to Hashem through the teshuva that we ended up doing. Haman's removal, rather Achashverosh's removal of his ring of authority and placing it in the hand of Haman did more than 48 Nevi'im and 7 Nevi'os were able to accomplish in trying to gently correct us and bring us to teshuva. But that really did work. The point of anti-Semitism is really my wake-up call to help me change whatever I can in my personal life so that I don't keep providing the bullets and Chas v'shalom, shrapnel and missiles to the enemies. There are no enemies. It's only us and the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Rav Elchanan Wasserman wrote this at length in Ikvus de Mashiach, where before the Holocaust happened, he wrote that there is no enemy outside of ourselves. All the shalom that we need to make is between us and the Kadosh Baruch Hu. When we make shalom between us and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's when our enemies will be vanquished. Let me share with you from Rabbi Yaakov Meir Shechter, Rosh HaMekubalim of Beis Kel in Yerushalayim, in his Sefer, V'nichtav b'Sefer. So in Maimah Yud Daled, he talks about eitzes for Bilbulei Hadas. When people suffer from anxiety, worry, fears, so he reveals what we've been saying all along. He quotes it from the Balatanya in Parshas Veichanan, Perek Vav. He quotes the following: Kol hergeshei ha'adam. All the feelings. Here, regesh is not being used in Tanakh, so this is a rabbinical term which means our feelings. All the emotions. Kol hergeshei ha'adam nimshachim acha machshavasai. Are drawn after what he thinks. It's your thinking that's schlepping in those feelings. Your feelings are created by your thoughts. If I think about something that's going to get me nervous or has v'shalom, even depressed, and that's what I'm thinking, I turn myself into someone who is atzav, nervous, depressed, and dayek, and worrying. If he were to think on something that is happy, maybe alatz my simcha. He starts to feel happy, bring happiness upon himself. Hakol taloi b'machshava. If he wasn't thinking about any of these two extremes, he wouldn't be feeling any of these two extremes: depression, nervousness, anxiety, or happiness. Nimsa. So the conclusion here is the following: Im la'adam yesh pachadim or shigyonos. If a person is suffering from pachadim, real fears, shigyonos is like obsessive thinking. He wakes up thinking about that person, wakes up thinking about the debt, wakes up thinking about this rotten marriage. I've just got to stick it through. Baruch Hashem, I'm only here till 120, and is obsessively thinking about the partner and the business and global problems. Ha'etza eina lehilachem behem. The etza is don't take up fight. Don't combat these thoughts. Litchaysim b'kayach, or try to push them away with kayach. Do you know why? You don't have to fight your thinking. You just have to stop thinking. It sounds ridiculously simple because it's ridiculously, embarrassingly simple. I'm sorry? You could argue that, but over here I'm not sure if it applies exactly, because over here it's saying be Mesiach Das. So don't get busy with them. Don't join, don't think, just don't think about it. Find something else to think about. Make a phone call. Get back onto the project. Call up a client. Just be Masir Das. How many times in our lives we are really upset with someone, but really, really upset, and suddenly the phone rings and it's an important call and you take it, and all the emotion of anger suddenly is dissipated. How did that just happen? And the answer is your mind is what was responsible for your anger. And the moment your mind went to the phone call and you saw, oh my gosh, he's calling me. This is a client. I need this deal, and switch in a second, split second. You know, I'm going to share with you. I don't have a raya for this, but I can't find any other explanation. There's a chazal in Esther Rabbah, in Medrash Rabbah on Esther. Yeshuas Hashem keheref ayin. There never was such a case where Yeshuas Hashem took place in the split second of a blink, the blink of an eye. Your eye blinks once, it takes 1/6 of a second to blink your eye. And we're saying, this chazal saying, Yeshuas Hashem keheref ayin. It's like the blink of eye, maybe a drop faster, and even if it's a drop slower, it's less than a second. Whenever was Yeshuas Hashem keheref ayin? Mitzrayim, you can say it was Chatzois Hayom, be'etzem hayom hazeh yatzu tzvakos b'nei Yisrael min Mitzrayim, but the real Chayrus didn't happen till at least 7 days later, when the Mitzrayim drowned in the Yam Suf. Where was there ever keheref ayin? The whole story of Purim wasn't keheref ayin, it was over a 12-year period. When was there keheref ayin? The only moment any single human being can experience a Yeshua is in a thought, which is less than the blink of an eye, by far. In the thought, in realizing, Rebbeinu Shalom, either as the gentleman earlier pointed out, this is emunah, it's coming from you, or realizing, before I even get to the emunah part, where am I experiencing the stress, the crisis, the suffering? And the answer, shockingly, is over here. And we know that from stories which got into Shulchan Aruch. The story I'm thinking about is actually from Nachum Ish Gamzu and his Talmud, Rabbi Akiva. Nachum Ish Gamzu, he's the father of Gamzu Latova. Famous story in Chaf Aleph in Tainus, where I'm not going into the whole story, but I just want to bring out a very simple point. If you were elected to be Mashamish Nachum Ish Gamzu on this important mission, where you're going from Eretz Yisrael to Rome, in order to appease the Caesar and rescind, hopefully completely, the various decrees against Klal Yisrael. And you brought this chest of treasure, of jewelry and gold and silver, and you open it up. Now I'm asking you to be the person standing next to Nachum Ish Gamzu, that when the treasure chest is opened and there is sand. And what was the response of Caesar? Very normal response. Outrage! What are you thinking? He was so angry that he immediately wanted to bring about a decree of total destruction of all Klal Yisrael. So let me ask you, what do you think would be called a normal response? You're the Shamash, taking care of Nachum Ish Gamzu, and he says, with a huge smile on his face, without the slightest change of beat from his heart, Gamzu Lataiva. What are you thinking? We're gonna get hung. We're gonna get assassinated in a matter of minutes. And not only did we not appease Caesar, we've made it worse for all Klal Yisrael. We've totally failed in our mission. I would consider that much more normal, and yet Nachum Ish Gamzu, he was sent because he was melumad in Nisim, meaning he knew, B'das Shalema, that everything that happened in his life was Hashem turning up in his life. Whether it was the Caesar or his not very gracious host who switched the treasures for sand. And then Eliyahu Navi, split second, arrives on the scene, disguised as one of the ministers. and excuse me, Your Royal Highness the Emperor, the Jews are not very well known for being stupid. So I'm wondering if the reason they gave you this chest of sand, maybe it's the same dirt that was used by their patriarch against the 4 kings, and he conquered all 4 of them. So Caesar said, you know what, you're right, this makes no sense. Let's try it on one particular country, which we never succeeded in making them succumb to us, and it worked. See, the point of the story, though, is to teach us, how am I meant to live my life? After I get over the immediate fright, what's my next thought supposed to be? Comes along Rabbi Akiva, the Talmud of Nachmish Gamzu, and he's refused. Gemara in famous Gemara in Brachas and around about Samach, I didn't check before, but Samach Aleph, where he's refused hospitality. Knocks on I don't know how many doors. He ends up sleeping in a forest. Okay, so at least I've got my candle with me so I can learn a bit. A gust of wind blows out the candle. Okay, no hospitality, not one door opened and gave me. But now I can't even learn. And then a wild cat comes and devours his rooster. What's going on? And then a lion attacks and kills his donkey. He has no transport. He has no light. He has no rooster to wake him up, either for Chatzos or Amud HaShachar to daven nates. And Rabbi Akiva could easily say, I'm throwing in the towel. Rabbi Shalom, what do you want from me? What was his response? Every way along this string of adversity. Kol the Avid Rahmana. How much is Kol? 95%? 97%? 100%. Kol the Avid Rahmana, Letav Avid. It can only be for the good. Can I see it right now? Maybe not. In the end, he was saved by each one of those items because terrorists came in the middle of the night and looted and killed and who knows what, the whole town, and he was saved because no one gave him hospitality. Had his light been lit, they would have seen someone's hiding out there in the forest and got away. If his rooster had brayed, or the donkey had brayed, give away his position. So each one of those was meant to save his life. He gets back to the best medrash, and he reminds his Talmidim, do you remember I told you? Kol da'avid Rahman latav avid. And that story, its conclusion, is in Shulchan Aruch. Reish Lamed Sif Hey. La'olam! There's an extra word there. La'olam! How do you translate la'olam? Always! That's a strong term. Consistently, la'olam yehi adam ragil loima. A person should train himself to say, Kol da'avid Rahmana latav avid. God, you are incapable of doing anything to hurt your people. What looks like hurt, the worst scenario, please be merciful me for being honest, the worst scenario is someone dies, and that's not the worst scenario. If he doesn't get up at Tchias HaMesim, that's really the worst. But there's Tchias HaMesim. So I'm going to close. You're celebrating Purim, and you just got up to the Baal Kaira gets to Perek Gimel, and the description there of Haman ascending to Mishnah Lamelech, and then the whole party with the decree against us, and one lady in the gallery starts screaming, we're going to be killed! They're going to kill us all everywhere! They're going to all turn against us! There's a decree, we're all going to die! Now, what do you say to her? What do you say to her? You're obsessing over this perek. There's 7 more prokim to go, and wait till the end of the story, for heaven's sake. And it's happened already, and it's a good ending. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu went out of his way through his Nevi'im to give us the last chapter of this horrible galus. Many different places, Yeshayahu, most of them. Perek Nundala, I think Pasuk Zayin, I think. I'm ending in just a few moments. I apologize, I've gone over time. He says, Berega katan azavtich. Berega. A rega means? a second. Berega means in less than a second, because we're talking about inside a second. Berega karton. Okay, so we're talking about a fraction of a second. Berega karton azavtich. I forsook you, I left you for less than a split second, in reference to Golas Edom. Uberachamim gedolim ikabatzech. But with an abundance of rachamim, I will bring you in. Mashiach's coming, kibbutz golias, by shlishi, tchias hamesim. Hashem gave us all what's going to be in the end, so that no matter what bad news sounds like or looks like, we don't have to scream they're going to kill us, because we know how the last chapter is going to end. And even if I don't make it to the very last chapter, hey, Tchias HaMesim means we're going to be alive forever. That's a long time. So I close, and I truly mean it. The bottom line is, stress is a thought-induced experience. And the Tosha Rebbe once had a Talmud who had a lingering court case that would have meant somewhere between 18 years jail or life. And at one point in the conversation where he was asking for a bracha, he said, I'm really worried. And the Tosha Rebbe quickly looked up and said, worry? That shouldn't last for more than a second. Meaning a Jew, the moment we get the thought of anxiety or fear or worry, we should have a filter, lo taturu achrei levavchem. We should have a filter that says, oh, no, don't go there. Uproot it, start again, move on. Find something good in this, because that's how we turn our muzzle around. Our muzzle is in our mind, in our mouths. In the schus of knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has never forsaken us, we should be zoicha to, b'simcha, come to the Gula Shlema b'mhira Ameinu. Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
The water.
Oh, yeah, now I'm thirsty.
Shem Irgin Shir Termas is blessing. Like to give a big yashikayach to Rabbi Rietti for the inspiring drasha. Like to give a big yashikayach to Mr. and Mrs. Matas Abraham for sponsoring tonight's shir. Sponsor the remaining shir tomorrow night. Call Irgin Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Sponsor the shir or to donate to Irgin Shir Torah if you missed out by the dinner. And have a chelik in Labotzas HaTorah of Irgin Shir Torah, which continues throughout the year worldwide. For coming, Chananya ben Akasha, Emma Rotzaka, the Baruch Hu Zakes, as Yisrael, the figure Hebrew, Torah Mitzvah, Shenem, Al Noy Chofes, and Man Sidkoi, Yagdol Torah V'Yader.